Say I was gonna. Finally, I made it. I apologize.
I just learned how to, after what, 12 years of being friends with you, I learned how to shut you up, hitting the live button, and then you stop talking. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
you just
Woo.
that. I guess that's all you got to do is say live, and I just.
That was a dozen years in the learning. Gee.
It takes a lot of kids a dozen years to go through school, but
Yeah,
you have graduated elementary, my friend.
I guess so. Lucky me.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy.
Morning, Keith,
Oh,
the maker of our favorite cinnamon buns, is here.
whoa.
Roy's
Where's
place in Claire's home, remember?
So I think I might go there.
Yeah, I think you should
Gotta
go there
run.
today.
Going
Yeah.
for a cinnamon bun.
Well, you look like you're in your truck, so you might as well.
I am. I am in my truck. Well, I couldn't make it on earlier because I couldn't get any service. So
Oh,
I found a farmer's field, and
okay.
yeah, here I am. So if I'm sitting in the middle of your field right now, I apologize.
Would you plug into a squirrel? Like, what? Where are you getting the power from the middle of a field?
Don't ask. Don't ask.
Okay,
Okay.
so you're sort
So,
of taking over Coffee Club today. Do I have this
well,
right?
you have this right because it's one of those things that I'm going to give people the background history of Jody Seeley and Cold.
Mm-hmm.
They
Okay.
are fire and water. Yeah, it's just oil and water. It doesn't work.
I don't like being cold. No.
Why? Why cold dipping?
Well, and I think too, because we have a lot of new people joining the platform. So, just to give a full background, in case you hadn't watched, because we are live on LinkedIn today, which is
Oh,
new for
okay.
Coffee Club. We're new to LinkedIn. So, you may not have seen a lot of the stories that have been on both Facebook and Instagram over the last 30 days. And for whatever reason, which we'll dive into,
Yeah,
I challenged myself to do 30 days of dipping in the river, not in a tub, not at a healing place,
yeah.
not at the Nordic spa,
Oh,
not
natural.
in the river for 30 days.
Well, and
And
I
I
don't
finished
understand
now.
it. I
Yeah.
don't understand it. I can name two events last year where you said I'm too cold to ever do this again.
Oh, ski jordu.
Like you
On
had you had snow pants, you had a winter jacket, you had a jacket underneath that, you had your winter boots, you wanted battery operated heated socks and battery operated gloves, but yet there's been snow on the ground for a week and you've been laying in the river half naked. Go
yeah,
ahead.
the things have turned. So, well, I think that sorry, Keith is he's like he's headed to Calgary to do a test baking in a new oven.
Well,
Ooh, he's
I'm a
here to
good
be
test
inspired.
eater.
Oh gosh. Well, here we go. So, okay, so I've had friends who've been cold dipping. Some people call it cold plunging. It's called
Yeah.
cold immersion, different places where you look up and get the details. Now, before I started this journey, I actually didn't really know the scientific benefit behind the cold immersion plunge. I learned that as I went through the process. So call
Yes.
me crazy.
Yes.
But I had a friend who had been doing it quite a bit. I have a friend Tyrone that people met on Coffee Club a couple of weeks ago who actually was
Aquaman.
first planted the seed 5 years ago for me to try this. And I guess it's just kind of always been in the back of my head. But the end of September, it was late at night. The moon was out, and a friend being like, she was like, I'm going to go cold dip before I head back to Okotoks. And I was like, now? And she was like, yeah, this is my friend Jess, who you're going to meet on Coffee Club very soon. And
Yes.
she was like, yeah, why don't you just come with me? And it was very spontaneous and very like in the moment. And so I said, okay. And so we went down to the river and we got in. It was freezing cold. But then there's a moment where in the dips, when you connect into your breath and you sort of sit in that space, it all of a sudden isn't really that cold anymore. But getting yourself to that space takes a little minute. And so we had this beautiful experience. We did it one more time with another friend before the end of September. And then at the beginning of October, I found a new spot kind of over where I live. And I really liked this cold dip spot. So I went in and had another great experience. And then just silently in my head, I was like, you should do this for 30 days and see what kind of difference it makes in your life to do something like this for 30 days in the river. Now, keep in mind, when I made that promise to myself, it was still 15, 20 degrees outside in October. Fall was
Well,
beautiful.
and
The water was still cold, but it
that's
wasn't
it.
so scary. Yeah.
Well, let's backtrack a bit. You're someone who I've said numerous times, and people don't. Some people may or may not know that you and I travel a lot of miles in the summer. I'll see a river, and I'm going to say it's warm out. Let's go jump in. You're going, no, that's way too cold.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you've become part polar bear on me, and you've decided that this is cool,
Yeah.
which I appreciate. And you've had numerous people come and join you for this, and we don't need to name them, or we can thank them, because I think
We can
you
name
sharing
whoever we
this is
want.
great. If you were to take 3 things that you've learned from this, and not spiritually, just 3 things that you've noticed about it, what would they be?
Like you want 3 physical benefits.
Yeah,
Is that what the question you're
a
asking?
100%.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I don't know. Um, okay, if I had to focus on the physical benefit, and I think what I would love to talk about more is that it really wasn't about this piece. So there's
We're
lots
we're
of
we're gonna
benefits.
get into the rest. We're gonna get
It's
into the rest. Don't
there's
worry.
lots of benefits. I'm not good at being interviewed. There's lots of benefits to the cold dipping as I've shared, and you can check my Facebook. I've got a pinned post on the 14 benefits of cold dipping. What I noticed was I get inflammation a lot and swelling due to my lymphatic system not totally working properly in my body. I found that a lot of that inflammation went down through that month,
Yeah.
through this past month. So definitely a reduction of inflammation for sure. I am someone who, as people know on Coffee Club, suffer migraines quite a bit. And there was times where I could get them every other day or so. And I've only had 3 since in the last 30 days. So that's a huge reduction for me. 3
Big
still
win.
seems like a lot to other people, but it's a big reduction for me. And well, I guess my body's tolerance to cold has changed. That's a
Yeah.
physical benefit to a lot of things, but yeah, I mean, there's probably others that I haven't noticed, haven't been aware of. There's long-term effects that will come from this that I might not know, but I think that's the 3 main ones.
Now, I'm gonna separate this into like 3 categories. So the
Okay.
first one was those physical. How about the mental part of it that, you know, I'm gonna be honest, it's gotta be a fight with yourself, and self-admittedly, I did this one day with you, and
You
that's a
did.
whole new conversation, because if people know anything about what I would call expansion and contraction, that's a whole new game when you dive into frozen water. Like, it's wonderful. But for you, mentally, what has this done? Because I notice you're a lot more, me as your friend, I notice you're a lot sharper. You're really in tune with what's going on.
Well, I think the mental game was probably the biggest one of this challenge because, like I said, the beginning of the challenge, the weather was relatively good, and so it's easy to go out and dip when the weather around you is okay. But there was days at the beginning too, if you look back in my Instagram stories, where it was really windy, and when you're cold before you get to the water, that's plays a lot. But I think as the weather got really cold in the last week and a half, the biggest part of the mind, and I'm going to call it mind fuckery because I can, was really strong, because it takes a lot to walk up to the edge of the river when there is actual ice on the top of it, and know that you have to find a way to get into that space. And I had a lot of moment where that was just frightening. Like, I'm like, I mean, who else has had the nightmare where you've fallen under the ice and you're trapped under ice and you're gonna die because ice is on top of you? I've had that nightmare multiple times in my life. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm just gonna, like, give myself that opportunity now. That seems really wise. Um, Please do know I kept very safe through this process. But these are the things. And so overcoming the fear of the ice, overcoming the fear of um, coming out of the water. Like, I think one of the biggest challenges physically in doing the dipping in the winter is the elements that you have in nature, which a lot of people don't maybe think of if you're dipping on your deck or other things, which are just as amazing, by the way. But when you're out in the elements of nature, you have to think about how quickly you're changing, how quickly you're able to warm up your body, all of these things, like things that you watch on freaking survivor shows that I was like, those people are dumb. Like, why would you even do that? And then there I am walking to the river with my axe and my swimsuit in
Yeah,
end of
we're going to talk about the tools here in a minute,
so,
because
I
the
think that there was a lot of things to overcome in the mind in that process. I think when you get in the water, there's an element of overcoming that becomes that mind piece as well. And I think that's why um, I feel, in my experience of that, why it's very cool that it's been connected with there's been research come out now where cold immersion therapy is possibly beneficial in the prevention of dementia and Alzheimer's, because there's so much mind piece that goes into this element. But when I pull myself out of the scenario, it was pretty freaking cool.
okay, let's go to the third part of it, and then I kind of have a backslash fourth. But the third part,
Okay.
the spiritual part of it, which, for people that don't know, you've become someone who is, I guess, a searching spiritual and a bit of a leader when it comes to meditation and different things like that.
Yeah. Well, I think that spirituality is always an interesting word of what that means to different people, and it means a number of different layers for myself. And so when I find myself connected um to land, to nature, it connects me to the higher for me. And everybody's got a different name for the higher for them. Okay. For me, I love me some Jesus. And the connection to God in that process was really amazing. And to me, that is what nature is at the end of the day. And so when I talked a bit with Tyrone about this last week, and just that the experience of doing it in the river for me was being able to connect myself back to land, back to nature, back to giving homage to creation. And so when you're in the water and you're in the land, like, there's so many pieces. And so in the world of like teaching meditation and healing and just ways that we can connect ourselves as humans to the nature that is our creation is so big. Like, and I think what was cool was, like, my feet are in the bottom of the river. So I'm standing in the ground of the river. And so you feel grounded and you feel secure. And you're in the water, which is an incredibly powerful healing system. And you're in the beautiful nature. And then, like, birds went by and deer walked through, and thankfully no bears, and all of these different things. And so spiritually, it really deepened my connection to creation. And I had the absolute blessing of having some people join me in the dips who taught me a lot about their spiritual ways. So what I felt very connected to was all of us in this human experience and our shared of spiritual wellness. And so I got to learn to smudge in my and do smudging ceremonies. Yesterday we had this most like incredible ceremony with some other people that taught from their Mexican background, and so I got to learn a lot of different cultural spiritual things in the journey, which I think was also really cool.
Now,
There were so many things.
it's awesome. Now, kind of one last question that I have, and if you were to write a one-page instruction manual on cold dipping, cold plunging, and the tools that you require for this are quite extensive depending on the time of year.
Yeah, I don't think I would ever write a one pager, because even though I've done it 30 days in a row, I feel not adequate in telling anybody how to do anything. It doesn't make you an expert in experimenting in that space. I mean, I'll be
Hey,
honest,
no, I'm
the
gonna
ice
stop. I gotta stop you. You
is
gotta stop.
dangerous.
Any
No.
job that you need a bathing suit and an axe for,
Yeah, I don't know if I'd recommend that to the average person. Like, I don't even know how I did that. And so, I think what happens is now, for if you've been watching this journey and you're like, "I wanna give it a try," I wouldn't start heading out to the river now, especially alone. But there are
no.
incredible groups, like there's a cold dip group in Okotoks, and there's a cold dip group in Calgary that does it in Bowness, where there's people who you do it as community. And I think that was another really cool find in the process, is the amount of community that cold dipping can build. And you know me, I'm like, anything where we can build community is amazing. And so I'm looking forward to, when the river's in a stable place again in the spring, to build more community around this immersion process, because
Are
again,
you saying there might be a high river cold dip crew
maybe, like,
happening?
we'll see what happens. There's just community that will happen around it through
All right.
Okotoks, through here. I know that there's group in Cochrane that's thinking of forming. Like, there's community that builds around it that I think is really fascinating, and I would recommend doing that. Um, the equipment that I required when it's really, really cold, that made a difference for me in the last 10 days of my challenge, was um, getting, what's that called? Scuba diving gear. So I had scuba diving booties, like neoprene booties and neoprene gloves, because your extremities getting cold are the biggest game changers for your ability to be able to stay in the water for different lengths of time. And so my feet being able to stay warm, as you know from past experience, when I get cold, if my feet are
Yeah.
cold, I'm done. That's where I check out.
That's
But
that's that's the
these booties
threshold
made
for
all
sure.
the difference. I did need an axe in the last several days to cut through the ice to find a deep enough spot to do that. But I will admit, like, my ignorance really in the process of, like, you don't realize when your legs are that frozen that they don't have feeling. Okay.
No,
And
no.
so when ice shifts and moves, it can cut you and it can bruise you. And you don't know till you're later warming up in the shower and you're like, hey, why is my leg stinging? And then you look down and you're like, oh, because it's bleeding. Cool. So those are things I don't, and I don't share that really flippantly. Like, I don't want
No.
people to think I was not prepared and safe in the process, because you have to be prepared and safe when the water's changing like this. And so it's not, I wouldn't recommend that piece. Like, I won't be in the river much moving forward because it becomes too unstable. But
So
I'm not
where
gonna lie, like, the tub I have on my deck, I've had it for a little bit, so I've been breaking the ice every day. I haven't gone in it, but looking in this bowl of ice cubes, I'm like, "Really? You want me to get into that?" It seems way more daunting than the river does.
oh boy.
Yeah, but that's what we're gonna try today. We'll see how that
You
goes,
are
but
you are you're special.
yeah. But what I
Yeah.
think the biggest lesson, if I can share that, I don't know what else you have for questions, but what I really feel called to share for people that I learned from this process is it wasn't even really what I was doing. It was the fact that I was doing something. And so for 30 days, my schedule was arranged around cold dipping times. So I knew every day that I would need this amount of time to execute the cold dip and the warm up, whether people came with me or not. So I changed my schedule to make this a priority in that 30 days. Because I did that, I trained myself to make myself a priority for 30 days in a row. And I think as humans in this world, and I'm going to say, I'm going to even play the card, like, especially women, we will give all of the pieces of ourselves to everybody else, to our work, to our kids, to friends, to all the things. And yes, men do it too, but I think as women we gravitate to giving it all away so much quicker than men do. And we easily find ourselves, especially when we're in the ages over 40, where we really start to wonder what our value is, what our purpose is, what our worth is, because we've given it all away over and over and over. And I'm here to tell you that if you don't make yourself that priority, you will never build your worth to the level that it matters, where all of a sudden you go, wait a second, none of this other stuff matters because I matter first. And that's really hard for us to do because we're so conditioned to not be selfish and to help other people and to do all of these things. But we have to step into the space where we go, just a second. Actually, all of these other things are going to fall into place after I make myself first. And I taught myself in the past 30 days that my value is enormous, that my worth matters more than anything else to me. And when I made myself that priority, it changed so much in my life. And I thought, like, people say, like, oh, yeah, no, I could see how that could happen. But I just encourage you, whatever it is, it doesn't even have to be 30 days, and it definitely doesn't have to be cold dipping, but do something on a consecutive level that puts yourself first, and then come back and tell me how that changes your life, because it just shifted everything.
That's awesome. I'm not going to ask any more questions. I think that is the best way to close this out.
Well, and I think that the piece is scheduling it in. And I've been told that probably a billion times in my life with everything that I've ever tried to do. Like, think of any time we've tried to work out or add movement or change our diet or get more rest or whatever it would be. You get told to schedule it. And I hate being a scheduler because I don't like the structure of a calendar. However, um, I
Oh,
just knew every single day, whether I wrote down, okay, at 1 o'clock today, I'm going to dip. Whether I wrote it down or not, I knew there was a chunk of my day that was devoted to this. And really, that's the word I like, is devoted. Is you need to create a devotion to yourself to bring your worth to the next level. And I would love every single person in this world to do it at least once, because it feels so crazy. Like, I don't know. And I think you get an amazing release in that. Like, I was a crying psychopath yesterday, and it was awesome. And it was awesome. Yeah.
the 4 Ds of life: dedication, desire, discipline, and devotion.
Yeah. I don't like the word discipline. So I replace it with devotion. Yeah.
You were disciplined enough to do this 30 days.
True. Because I was devoted to do it.
Oh, we can have one of those arguments on this right now,
We
can't we? Yeah.
absolutely could just spiral this interview now down to the ground in,
No, no, let's
um
let's leave it in a positive place.
yeah,
Well, I'm proud of
yeah.
you, and I'm sure I can't see the comments, but I'm sure there's a ton of people commenting. Um, Congratulations. And
Thank you.
I can't wait to hear more about this in the spring, because I think you've energized a bunch of people to say, if nothing else, I'm going to try this.
Yeah, and I think, you know what, in the river and in the spaces where there's no ice over the next couple of weeks, if you can find a space that's open. We found an open space yesterday, and it works out fine. But like the water temperature, one of the questions someone had asked me in the thing was like, well, what temperature is the water? I do never ever want to know what the temperature of that water was, because I think that number would have also played a number on my mind. And so I
Yeah.
was just like, I don't need to know. I can tell. What's interesting is I can tell how long I've been in the water based on how my body feels.
Yeah.
So that
I
was an
could
interesting.
tell how long I was in there based on how my body felt too.
Well, you know what? For a first time dip, and you went with a couple of us who had done a number of them, um, you lasted a really great time. And I think people get hung up on how long do I need to be in the water for? And just like
Oh,
I loved what Tyrone shared last week, in that it's not the length of time, it's the number of walls you break down. So in that process, like I got to take Jenny with me a couple of days ago, and Jenny had never done an ice dip before. And I've actually, we had never met before. We'd followed each other on Instagram, but we'd never met in person. And Jenny came to try a dip with me, which I'm so grateful, Jenny. Thank you so much. And it was just so fun that I was like, the length of time doesn't matter, because your first moment is like you have to connect to that breath to plunge yourself under the water. And then when you get into that cold, you have to connect yourself again, like the wall number one, wall number two. Then when you've been in there for a minute, you're like, okay, I really want to get out of here. My body's really cold. You have to connect to breath and break down the next wall. And so it's really, the time is irrelevant. It's the fact that you're doing it. And even yesterday, one of the guys who came with me for my 30th dip, he wasn't in very long, and he was like, oh, I'm sorry I ran out so quick. And I was like, please never be sorry. Like, it's each individual person's
yeah.
element to do that. And so it's not about the length of time, it's how many walls you break down in yourself in that time. And the next
Well,
time might be less, and the next time might be more. And it's all about the process. Just like anything in a healing journey, it's a practice. You have to practice it all the time.
you practice, and no two people's journey is identical. So it's
No.
no,
Well,
it's great.
no two bodies are identical. Like some people's bodies can handle different amounts of cold compared to others. Like it's really that that's based on the science of your body, which you have no control over. So, but I would like to take, just before we let go, I just want to say, like, thank you to Jesse for introducing me to this and being such an encourager. A huge thank you to April and Dina, who were they were with me on a lot of the dips, just in their own journeys. And I loved having people to come with me. Honestly, it did make it easier, but I loved watching how it was affecting them and changing them and seeing that happen. So just a huge shout out to you for coming for a dip. It was so good. We talked about Jenny, and also Tyrone and Caesar, who have been great supports, and were at my 30th dip yesterday, and we had this beautiful ceremony by the river. It was so cool. And it was just like so much fun. And everybody who sent encouraging messages, or even are like, what the F are you doing, Jody, in my Instagram inbox? Like everybody who sent messages, who encouraged me in some way through that 30 days, was a huge part of this journey. And it reminds you of the community that you have in your life. And sometimes when you feel really alone in a lot of the things that you do, when it's a solo, you know, in your mind, in your body journey, you forget that you have this beautiful community that surrounds you. And I think we sort of paint this picture of what we think community should look like, or friendship should look like, based on what we've been taught. But through that journey, I also learned, like, it can look so many different ways. And we are supported and loved in every single thing that we do. So
Well,
whatever the thing is that's like nudging at you to do, just do it, because you are supported and loved, and you can do it.
well, well said.
And
And
that's
you
that.
know, people don't. I'm proud of you for this. Like you, oh boy! But I tell you what, now when we travel down the highway and they say there's some water, I guarantee I'm not going to be the one asking.
No.
You're going to be
Yeah.
stomping on the brakes for me and saying, "Let's go jump in there."
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy pants. All right.
All right.
Well,
Well,
I
thank you for
appreciate you
sharing those with
sharing
me.
your story, and I can't wait to. I'm sure there's more pictures and more information, and really, you need to write the one pager of why you need a bathing suit and an axe for this task.
I guess so. Yeah. The
Right?
scuba booties, that's the key piece. You can do anything with scuba booties. Anything.
Anything.
Anything. No. All
All
right.
right. Have a wonderful week, and thanks for everyone for watching.
Yeah. Thanks everybody and happy November.